Polybridge 3 is a game where all you need to do is move cars from one location to another. Ordinarily, you can just make a simple bridge to accomplish this, but today I had a crazy idea. How many levels can we beat using only a single piece of road to move cars around on? Now, when I first thought of doing this challenge, the first level that came to mind was actually this one right here. Now, it's a pretty ordinary level overall, and you can see there's actually a pretty big gap to cover, but the reason I wanted to try it out is there's this star in the middle that's lower than the two islands. That I thought would be perfect for trying to make out a swing here, and you can see here, I put down my single road piece at the very start, and I started to build up a tower. Now, the height of this tower was actually pretty important because I had to make sure my truck wasn't going to dip down too far. Once I had that built though, I attached it up using two ropes to the road here, and trying it out, the positioning seemed pretty good, but I needed a way to stop this from swinging before the truck could get on it. To do that, I was thinking of using a wood muscle here, but intentionally weakening it so that as soon as the truck touched the road, it'd instantly snap it and start to move. The problem though is I just couldn't get this weak enough here, and you can see once the truck gets on it, the whole tower ended up collapsing. So next, I knew I was gonna need to try something that only used a single wood piece to hold it back, and you can see here, I used a couple of steel pieces to build up a triangle, and I put the wood piece at a pretty extreme angle. This makes it quite a bit weaker, and you can see trying this out, the truck was actually able to get on it pretty easily. Unfortunately though, it came off at the end, and it seemed like I was lacking a lot of energy to get to the flag. Now, by moving in the attachment points to the rope, it's gonna make the road slightly angle up and hopefully prevent it from falling off at the end. Giving this a try, it seemed to be doing a lot better, but I still just didn't have enough energy to make it all the way over to the flag. Now, to solve that, you can see what I'm doing here is changing out the ropes, and I'm using some steel pieces instead. This is gonna make the arms completely rigid, and by doing this, it's gonna let me add in a counterweight to intentionally pull over the truck more. Now, unfortunately, I can't use roads for my counterweight, so instead I have to use long pieces of steel. I've heard one of the big changes of this game is now materials actually have weight based on how long they are, so by making these long spans here, it should make this as heavy as possible. Now, after linking those up at the top here, surprisingly, it actually seemed to work on the first try. The truck got all the way over to the flag here, and that's a level completion. Now, of course, though, we're still getting warmed up because that was a pretty easy level. This next one, while I do have a shorter gap to cross here, I only have wood, so this is gonna be a little hard to support. Now, to start, I ended up just putting down my road like before, and you can see what I'm starting to do now is put some wood attachment points on the outsides of that. Now, you can see me building up these wood diamonds here, and I'm attaching them in a very specific way. This whole mechanism is gonna let the road go across in a perfectly straight line, and by doing this, I'm hoping to reduce the stress on the wood as much as I can. Now, once I got the bottom mostly supported here, I needed to attach up the top, and to do that, I started using some wood to build up a simple tower. Now, I had a feeling this tower wasn't gonna be able to perfectly support itself, so after copying this over one more time here, you can see what I'm doing is attaching this up to the back island. This seemed like a good idea at first because I could use wooden ropes to hold this back, but the issue with this is it would slip a little bit too much and the whole tower would still end up collapsing. So next, what I wanted to try doing instead was bracing over on the left island. To do this though, I need to do a full truss system all the way over to the tower, and once I got this attached up to the bottom here, it really wasn't the best. This still ended up falling over a lot, so I ended up rebuilding it, and you can see now I'm bracing to the top of the tower. Now, finally with this, I should be able to keep it from falling, and I wanted to give it a test. Now, at the very least, this was keeping itself together, but I still needed a way to pull over the mechanism to get the car to the other side. To do this, I was gonna need another counterweight, and this time you can see I used a chain of wood as a rope and attach it up to a pivot point. Now, by using my same trick from before, you can see here I can stretch the wood and make a nice counterweight to pull this over. This, of course, was a very difficult task, and you can see here I pretty much got it now, but the car would still run right off the end because it took too long to move over. To solve that, I tried very carefully weighing the counterweight again, and also you can see here I'm moving up the road a lot. This slope is just barely too much for the car to get over, and by doing this, it gets perfectly stuck on it and carried over to the other side. This level was kind of a nightmare to tune, and this next one actually seemed pretty good. Now you can see here, we have this custom shape that moves up and down, and the van nearly falls on it to begin with. Now to start, I was wondering if I could just use a couple pieces of steel on a road to guide it on, but this just didn't seem to quite make it. Now next, I wanted to catch the van a little bit earlier in its fall, so you can see I lifted up the road, but since the custom shape falls so far down, the van ended up completely missing it. Now after a bit of reinforcing here, you can see what I did is raised up the road a lot, and I copied over some of the supports. Now once I got this height mostly settled correctly, you can see I end up getting stuck on the edge of this road, and once it starts to fall, it throws the van off the side. Now at first, I thought I just made really good progress, but already with this, I was able to get the star and hit the flag. This was kind of amazing, and what I wanted to try doing was budget shaving a lot to see just how low I could get this bridge. Now by deleting off my crazy muscles here, I was able to get this down to right about $15,000, and you can see it still works in exactly the same way. This design already was the second cheapest braking design on the leaderboard, and I figured this, I was doing pretty well. Now compared to that last level though, this next one's gonna be kind of insane. This one's called Back to Foundations, and usually you have to make a massive bridge to get across. This of course is kind of a problem, and starting out here, you can see what I did is put down my road piece at the front and one at the back just so I could measure things up. Now after building halfway across here, you can see the next thing I did is started to build straight up. To support this, fortunately I can use foundations here, and my plan is to make another straight line mechanism, but this time to make it insanely long. This one needs to span a little less than 80 meters, and to do this, I need to build up very high. Now, when I started building this, I did it kind of haphazardly here, and I was just trying to keep everything mostly together. It didn't really matter to me if all the pieces were super efficiently made. I just wanted to get the basic shape together and see if it would work. To support the other side of this arm though, I was gonna need to build a massive tower, and I just started doing that now out of some steel. Now with all that in place though, I still need to link the top and bottom pieces together, and to do that, I just used a few more pieces of steel here, and with this, I wanted to try it out. Now it looked great right up until it started moving, and that's when it immediately broke apart. Now I tried using a couple pieces of steel to support this on the bottom, but even with this little cheat, it still wasn't able to get there. Using more steel on the arms seemed like a good idea, but now it was just so heavy, it was breaking under its own weight. Now my other issue is that even if I got this fully working, I still need to copy this over one more time and attach it to the other side of the road. Now once I put this in place here, I knew it was gonna be even worse than before, and trying this out, it immediately fell apart on me. This seemed like it was going to be pretty much impossible to solve, so what I decided to do here was to delete off all of my steel and basically rebuild the mechanism, but a lot better. Now to do this, so you can see here, I'm using a couple of steel pieces and I'm building them out in a very predictable way. Once I got this basic diamond structure put together, it was already looking a lot better. So I angled this over to the side here, I flipped it over, copied it on the bottom, and you can see after that, I copied it over to the top. Now I also put some more steel in the middle to link all these sections together, and I could see now this was already going to be a lot more efficient than before. I still wasn't sure if the weight was going to work out, but you can see here I'm rebuilding this top linkage, and once I got that attached up, I wanted to try it. Now by still having a support on the bottom, I was actually able to keep this all together, which was a massive improvement, but as soon as the limo touched the road, it instantly managed to collapse in itself and completely crumble. Now it was around now I decided to turn on unlimited materials to see if I could use any ropes to keep this together. Cables have much less mass than anything else, so if I was gonna get this to work, I figured I'd probably need to use them. Now I built up some simple chains of steel here, and after that, you can see I'm using cables to keep all of these sections together. This should keep the whole thing rigid, and once I built this up on the bottom, I copied it up to the top and also flipped it over for the other support. For additional strength, I used some diamond pieces of steel on the inside of these big diamonds here, and with this, I wanted to try it out. Now this almost seemed to be working, but it still ended up just crumbling in on itself, and I needed even stronger steel pieces in the center of these diamonds. Now, I double reinforced them at this point, and you can see I'm using more cables to hold this together. Finally, with this design, I actually had something that was keeping itself in the air here, and I didn't have to rely on any bottom supports. This wasn't bad, and by using a spring piece on the bottom here, I was able to have the limo drive on it and stop. This was as far as I had ever gotten, but it still ended up collapsing right here. Now, I went on a bit longer trying to reinforce a few more pieces, but it seemed like it was getting away from me, and this design just wasn't going to be strong enough to work. So now you can see I deleted off all of the steel that I had, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. Fundamentally, I wanted to do the same thing, but instead of having one straight line linkage span the entire 80-meter gap, I wanted to have two span half of the distance. This, of course, is going to be a lot easier to support, and you can see now I'm building up everything basically at half the scale I had before. Even at this scale, though, things were still breaking like crazy, and it took a ton of reinforcing to keep it in the air. Now, I made a counterweight to hopefully pull over the limo here, and you can see I'm using my same trigger mechanism from before with a single wood piece that intentionally breaks. This lets the limo drive on the road, and you can see here it actually gets stuck and starts to make it over. During its journey, though, it ran into one of these foundations and ended up falling off. I figured that was actually probably okay, though, and if I copy this over one more time, I might be able to get it to go all the way over. The issue with this design, though, is it kind of requires two roads, because there's no way for me to give up the road from the first mechanism and put it on the second one. Now, also, it ends up pulling over way too early here, and that's because I have no great way to trigger it to move. Once I saw this, I had to delete my mechanism again, and I was getting kind of desperate. My next idea was some sort of trebuchet design to throw the cars over, but it was a pretty big gap, and trying to design something like this is a tall order even when I have the sandbox to put parts wherever I want. I still decided to press on though, and I created an attachment point, and also I created a mini tower with a pivot point to hopefully pull on the first set of arms. Now, I tried to use another trigger mechanism to get this to work, and once I got this all together here, it sort of started to move, but it was just too hard to weigh this down correctly, and it seemed like I wasn't gonna be able to get any meaningful speed on it. After that, I thought that I might actually have a chance to build a true trebuchet here if I could put the road in front of the limo. This wasn't gonna do very well for the second car, and I saw pretty quickly that this did end up breaking. But one thing I did notice while trying this out was that the limo ran into the foundation and ended up stopping. Now, we saw this before and I didn't think much of it, but I thought that maybe I was missing the most obvious solution to this ever. By putting down a chain of foundations, could I just drive all the way to the end with absolutely no trouble? Starting out, it actually seemed pretty good at first. The limo was making its way over, but I did notice the second car got stuck. I thought that maybe the issue was the way it was ramping on the roads, and putting down a road at the very front here did help a lot, but it still ended up getting stuck, and I realized the problem is that it runs into the limo and ends up completely stopping. Now, by moving around these foundations, I was able to get it to go further and further every time I tried this out, but it still would just get stuck so often, and it was a real problem that the limo was so slow. Now, instead of doing minor tweaks, I thought next, maybe if I spaced apart the foundations a very specific way, it would keep the back car going slow enough it would never hit the limo. This seemed like a good idea at first here, but I could see that the limo was going so slow now, the car in the back would instantly just hit right into it. This really felt possible though, so my next idea was to space these foundations apart so that their two white outlines would perfectly touch each other. Now, by doing this, for whatever reason, the spacing ended up being just right here, and you can see trying this out, the back car is perfectly kept going slow. Now, of course, though, by doing this, there is a big problem. I end up having this gap at the very end here I can't fit a foundation in, and a road also kind of struggles to span. Now, at first, I tried attaching it up to the last foundation here, and giving this a shot, it actually seemed to be working pretty well. The car in the the back was being paced really well and it wasn't running into the limo. This made its way all the way to the end, but unfortunately the limo just wasn't able to get all the way over this road in the back and ended up getting stuck. Now next, instead of attaching to the foundation, I tried laying the road on the edge of the foundation. This gave a gentle enough slope for the limo to get over, and with this, that actually let it beat the level, and you can see the car in the back's also able to get over it. Now, is this particular solution cheesy? I mean, it absolutely is, but it's working, so that's really all that matters. But guys, if you have any more levels you want to see me try this challenge on, make sure to leave them down below. And of course, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more Poly Bridge 3 content, and otherwise, till next time.